All right, my name is Rich Schmidt. We're here with Jackson Grom. It's January 20th, 2026, and we're at Abbott Claim in Carlton. Jackson, thank you so much for joining us today. The first question is, why wine?
So I grew up in Chicago, suburbs of Chicago, and I graduated high school. At that time, my parents had just gotten into wine. They started to go to California and get more into it. I didn't even remember this until recently. My mom mentioned it, that for my graduation party, I didn't want to have a party. I just asked her to taste me through a bunch of wines. I had absolutely no interest in wine at all at that point. They just had the idea. I had the idea to taste through. Like, why do my parents want to do this? Why are they spending so much money traveling and doing this wine with everybody, all their friends? So I wanted to try it out. So did that. Completely forgot. And I didn't know what I wanted to do when I graduated high school. But I knew my parents were really pushing me to go to university of some sort. So they said, I didn't have any ideas, and they said, hey, there's this school in California where you can learn how to make wine, and we like wine. Do you want to apply there? It ended up being UC Davis. And I said, sure, I'll apply there. So I only applied to UC Davis, ended up getting in, and to show how little I knew about wine, on the application form, I actually checked entomology instead of enology. So I got accepted into the entomology program at UC Davis, and then had to work 2 years to get out of it. Luckily, a lot of the prereqs were similar, so I didn't have to go off major or anything.
It's insects, right?
Yeah.
Entomology?
Yeah, which was ridiculous. And they said California. I was like, okay, I can skateboard year round. I'm going to go to California. So that's mostly what I did when I moved to California. But I didn't know anything about agriculture, didn't know anything about wine going into it. My first course was Intro to Viticulture, and that first day of Vit 101 at UC Davis was insane. It was so inspiring. I was like, what? They use rootstock and scion? They don't use the same plant? What? I called my mom. I was like, did you know this? Like, no, I didn't know that. I was all blown away. And then just fell in love with it from there. Through my years at school, I ended up doing research with Andrew McElroan, who does a lot of hydrology work with grapevines and rootstocks. So I was a part of some really cool rootstock trials. I was also a TA for a tractor driving course. UC Davis is kind of infamous for having this tractor driving course that a lot of people just try to sneak into, or really, really want to do, because you just get to drive tractors and learn everything about that. So I loved that. I met my wife in that class, which is awesome. She was much better than me at driving tractor at that point. But I ended up teaching it for 2 years after that as a TA, and really, really got into it. I really enjoyed being with a machine and seeing what it did to soil. And it was just a really cool experience. And then my wife, she was in the sustainable ag and food systems major. So she kind of introduced me to what organic meant truly, and how to naturally produce a product of some sort. Mm-hmm. So I got more into organic side, and through learning about viticulture and enology, I don't know why, but I liked the concept of minimal inputs, with more natural inputs. But coming from suburbs of Chicago, food came from the grocery store. I had no idea. So I was learning on the fly, learning from other colleagues and from my wife about what it meant to be organic, and then using more cultural methods of disease control, anything you can do with canopy management that's not pesticide driven or herbicide driven, whatever you can do to minimal input but still have a really healthy vine, healthy product. I was just into it. And a funny story, while I was in school, I was living with my wife, and we had a roommate at the time who was a wine buyer for a local grocery co-op. She showed us this article of this guy and his wife who had similar backgrounds to us. His wife well, he went to UC Davis, I believe for the master's program, and his wife had worked for the same nonprofit as my wife did. And my wife said, why don't we just, they're in some magazine. And so my wife said, why can't I just email them? So she emailed them and said, hey, can we spend some time together? Ended up being Steve Mathiasen and his wife, which I had, we really didn't know much about it, but they were generous enough to invite us to their home. So we went over to their house in Napa, and they had distributors from Sweden out, from New Jersey, just going in and out of their house. They made us dinner. We spent a whole evening with them. It was a really special, I have to look back, it was a really special experience. And at the end of the night, Steve asked me, he's like, why did you go to California to make wine? I just wanted to skateboard. He's like, hold on. He went to some other room and brought back a first edition Thrasher magazine. And he's a huge skateboarder and loves skateboarding. This is the coolest experience of my life. But yeah, it was cool. We got to see their property, and they have this huge avocado tree, and he showed us his tractor he uses on his home site. It was really cool just to get introduced to somebody who was at that time, it still is. He was in a movie. I saw that later he was in a documentary. Like, whoa, this guy's a real deal. That was a pretty fun experience. And then, it was time to graduate. I graduated 2018 with an undergrad in V&E, and I knew my wife had some family in Portland, so we knew we wanted to move up north, and I knew I didn't want to work in California. I wasn't really interested in being on fire, or just being really hot. I didn't do any internships. All I did was do research, and I taught tractor driving, so no internships, no harvest, nothing, no cool international travels. I was very boring. And I just studied through summer. I took courses in the summer. And then when it came time to graduate, we went up to we went up to Oregon right before graduation, and we did some interviews, trying to line up some jobs when we moved out there. And I interviewed at Argyle for a harvest internship, and I interviewed at RP, Results Partners, for a full-time position. And then I got the offer while I was there to work at RP. And I'm boring. I was like, okay, full-time job, I'm doing it. So I met with the president, Daniel, and I think Alex Cabrera. Met up with them, did a quick interview, and then they offered me the job, I think a few days later, to be as an operations assistant. So 2018, we moved to Portland in an apartment. My wife was still looking for a job, but I was commuting from Portland into McMinnville every day, 6 days a week, and it was rough. But it was also, I started a new job. It was so exciting. My first day of work was at Alexana. I was counting clusters, doing yield estimates. So that was cool. And then I worked there for 2 years. And while I was there, they really put you through the ringer at RP. You learn a little bit about everything. And I was driving tractor for them. I was hauling fruit for them. I was working with alongside crews. I was pruning, brush pulling, anything you can imagine I was doing. And I was mainly working with Evan Strode, who kind of oversees the domain, Domain Serene, that area along Dundee Hills. And then now they have some stuff at the old Amity. I also had a chance to work when they were starting to develop the residence property where the tasting room is. They called it the Jadot home ranch. It was the Jadot family. So I got a chance I planted a lot of those acres and really got those established. It was very cool to see. It was cool to meet Guillaume and be a part of that. It was cool. That was my first top grafting project, was out there at the residence property, which is really, it was fascinating. And they were doing everything organic from the start. So it was really a way for me to see what it looks like to do that, what it takes. And then I was just building relationships with the guys I was working with. And I think that one of the most important things I learned from RP was Spanish. I truly field Spanish. So I'm not fluent by any means, but I can get by pretty well, I would say, just because I was thrown into crews, people didn't speak English. I remember my first day of harvest. Well, I think it was like my first day of harvest driving tractor. Someone said, be here at 5 a.m, and you're going to drive tractor for harvest. I was like, okay. And I can't remember what the vineyard's called, but it's right above Rex Hill, on the top of the hill there, something King something. And show up, nobody spoke English. It's 5 in the morning, it's dark, and people are yelling, like, blah, 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 blah. Lots of miming, right? So, okay, I got to do this. You had to move fruit from this top of the, top of this vineyard, like a quarter mile down this road into the back of a semi-truck. I don't know what they were doing shipping it, but it was a lot of moving parts, and it was pretty stressful. But that was my first experience driving tractor for harvest. And then ever since then, I mean, during harvest for RP, they taught me how to, I had never driven a truck with a trailer before. They taught me how to do that. Like, oh yeah, you have to put a pin there and lock the ball so your trailer doesn't pop out. Okay, so just learning everything about that, and I think that's what led to a lot of another one of the more important things I learned from RP, which was connections. My wife and I have zero connection with wine anywhere. We don't have family in wine. We don't have friends in wine. I didn't really keep in touch with anybody from UC Davis who went up to Oregon. I don't think a lot of my cohort did. They stayed in California. So when I was delivering fruit, I was meeting people who were unloading me. And I met some very cool people, and I'm still friends with. I was delivering fruit, I was hauling for Winderly. So I was delivering from the Winderly property out in Dundee down to the Britton Winderly winery in McMinnville. So I met my friend Dallas Way, who's a great guy. I think he was a cellar hand there. He's now moved on to, I think he's the assistant winemaker at Abbey Road Farm now. He was one of my first friends I really met outside of RP friends. We had a lot of friends in RP, but industry friends that made wine. It was so fascinating. These people make wine. This is so cool, and so just hauling, I met Travis at De La Boo. I met him. I was his very first paying customer. I bought some Syrah because I dropped off fruit to him. I was delivering Gregory Hill is what it's called. Ranch. Gregory Ranch, Chardonnay to him. And he just started chatting me up, and we started talking about GSM blends, It's like, I've always really wanted to make cool climate Syrah. I was like, what? I'm making cool climate Syrah. Come check it out. So we tasted it, and then I ended up buying a bottle from him, which was really special. And it was great. And then toward the end of my job my time at RP, they put me in, I was putting in drip irrigation for different properties, including Bonnie Jean, which is right next door to here. I put in irrigation for one of their newer blocks. And I was on a huge bulldozer developing properties for a few months, almost a whole summer I was in a bulldozer. I was ripping, land planing, disking, and there was this crazy property in the Yosemite Hills that I didn't even know what the Yosemite Hills were at that point, but it was this really weird property. There were soil pits that nobody told me about there was 12 of them just scattered around this property, and I would look down because I had to climb a ladder to get into this bulldozer. And look down, that's a hole. I'm lucky I wasn't. I was luckily perpendicular to it a few times, but there was a few times when I could have totally just fell in this hole, and that ended up being Lily Springs, which is where one of the properties I manage now, which is part of Abbott Claim. Very, very weird. Oh yeah, another time during harvest, I met Alban. He didn't remember. I think it had to have been 2019 when I met him, but he was still making wine at Lingua Franca. So I met him here, delivered his fruits at Lingua Franca, and that's when I first met Thomas. And I remember that because it was funny. I mentioned this to him not too long ago, a few years ago. I said, Thomas, do you remember meeting me? He's like, nah, not really. He's like, well, I showed up with fruit, and you asked me if I was an intern for RP, and I said, no. Are you an intern? I had heard his name before, so I kind of knew he was, I think the winemaker, he was like a big deal at that point. He was still a big deal, so I kind of razzed him a little bit. That was funny. But I enjoyed delivering fruit. I remember, I was thinking about this last night. During harvest at RP, back before overtime regulations were a thing, people would work insane. I worked 28 days straight and it was at least, I mean, you work at least 8 hours, but most of those work days were 12 to 14. You leave at 5 and you're back by 7 p.m. or so. So, I mean, it was 2 years of that. I got a crash course in what it really means to grow fruit and manage teams of people, manage different sites, slopes, organic, conventional, different pruning methods, different canopy styles, different spray programs. I mean, it was amazing. I truly believe that was, like, RP was a master's in vocational, viticulture. It was pretty crazy. Mm-hmm. And I think it was 2020. I ended up, and while working there, I just got more and more into the idea of organic and what it means to, like, properly manage a property to be healthy, mm-hmm. to have a healthy soil, have a healthy environment around your commodity that you're growing. And I had the opportunity to learn more about it, and I ended up working at Tabula Rasa, just as Tabula Rasa Farms, just outside of Carlton. I was just basically a farmhand, and we managed pigs, cows, and chickens. It was really cool heritage breed pigs that were super docile. You can go up to them. They're American guinea hogs, they're little black hairy things. You go up to them and rub their belly, they'll plop over, and they're like a little dog. Very cute, very docile. And then, I mean, I was learning so much about pasture management, intensive, grazing, doing really short periods of time, constantly moving your herd to make sure that your grass can regenerate. I mean, pasture management was what I learned from that. It was pretty amazing. And then meeting Brenda and Frank Foti and Brenda Smola Foti, who are the owners there. They're great connections to have, and they're great people. They're very thoughtful, and they care a lot about what they're doing. It's fun to see where that place has showed up and where that place has gone. Mm-hmm. I was there before there was a hotel, but I was there watching them build these amazing water conservation tools, and the way that they would slow down water to replenish their pastures, it was fascinating, and I learned a ton from that. It was really cool. Building beaver dams. I mean, it was really special to be there. Worked there for only about 9 months because we were castrating pigs, and we had somebody come in who was helping us castrate our piglets, and he worked at a vegetable farm. So at that point, I was kind of done working. I was like, okay, I need a real job. I'm making minimum wage right now. I need, my wife and I were planning to have a child. I was like, okay, I need to have a real job. So I asked him one day, I asked the guy who came in, he did sales for the produce. And so I called him and said, hey, are there any job openings with where you work? 'Cause I know it's a pretty big organization. He's like, well, it's funny you ask because the farm manager just quit today. Can you come in for an interview? I think it was like 2 days, like on a Saturday. Can you come in for an interview? I was like, okay, yeah, let's do it. So I show up. It's at a single wide trailer, huge brand new processing facility. It's in St. Paul. So if you're going, are you familiar? Okay, so if you're going toward McKay Road, toward I-5 from here, you'll run into it's called Syrian Sun Farms. So interviewed that day, and he drove me around in his truck, the owner, Joe Siri. He drove me around in his truck, talked with me for like an hour and a half, and then pulled up. The interview was done. He's like, okay, when can you start? I'll offer you this much money. I was like, let me think about it. I'll get back to you. So I called my wife on the way home, and she's like, you have to take that now. So I called him right then and ended up taking it because it was a big deal. I didn't know, he had explained a lot while he was with me, but then I show up on day one, and this farm has so much history in Oregon. It's crazy. It's still family owned. It was at that time it was 1,000 acres of all organic, fresh vegetables, and it was still family run. So I was the first non-family member to be in a management position there. It was crazy. The guy who quit was the owner's little brother. So, and I know nothing about growing vegetables. I just have an agricultural based background. So that was a huge deal for me, because I show up and I have 25 people I need to make schedules for. I show up on day one and the owner said, hey, there's like 20 acres of cilantro that has this weird yellow spot on it. Can you go fix that? I don't know what the sprayer looks like. I don't know what you would use to do that. So I ended up calling a local rep who was someone who provided products for us at Valley Ag, and he's like, oh yeah, use this and use this. You might even have it on hand because I sold you guys some. So I looked, and there was some on hand, and so I grabbed it, found out what the sprayer looked like, and it was a 64-foot boom sprayer. So I have these arms that kind of go out like a huge spider legs, and figured like that. And the owner's like, oh yeah, there's this one guy who knows how to use it. Like, call him and see if he can meet you at the sprayer, and you guys can go spray and figure out if there's people working and get them off and all this stuff. So, I mean, it was those guys. The Syrian Sun farm has been around. I don't know for sure. I didn't see pictures or anything or whatever, but from what the owner's father said, who still kind of runs around, he does a lot of work for the farm still. He said that Syrian Sun was delivering produce in a horse and buggy into Portland. So it's been around forever. They were based in Clackamas, Damascus for a long time. And then they expanded into St. Paul, and they have property in the Dalles too. So I was mainly responsible for around 600 acres in the St. Paul area. And then they had about 150 in Clackamas, and then 150, 200 in the Dalles. So huge operation. It was 200 people all the time, go, never stop. We would be ordering hundreds of thousands of starts every week, and they'd show up, and you just plant, and you just go, and you turn and burn. I mean, you just kept going. It was cool, but I learned. I mean, I was in a hole for a lot of my job there, just digging. Like, I was taking phone calls entirely in Spanish, trying to understand what people are saying. I had 13 different farms, like 13 different sites. So I'd be in a hole 10 feet deep trying to put a main line together that had exploded. And then I'd get a call that, somebody doesn't know what they're doing right now. Can you come fix this? So then, I learned how to weld. I learned how to just do minor fixes on tractors. I drove a tractor from anywhere from 1950s up until the 2020, It was crazy. I mean, I had tractors that had GPS, and then I had tractors that had a metal seat, and you had to, the starter solenoid didn't work, so you had to bypass it to get it started.
You had to hotwire the tractor.
You had to hotwire it, exactly. It was very cool, very fun. And I mean, I worked there for 2 years, and I learned so much about farming and just so much about people and so much more, even more Spanish. I mean, the community of people that were there it was incredible. I mean, they would hire people from Mexico in an H2A program. So a lot of their major staff, like tractor drivers, were on H2A.
What's that?
So H2A is a program where you can get a working visa just for ag, and you have to be sponsored by a company. So my company would sponsor people to have this visa. The Syrian Sun would send a coach bus that they bought. They would buy everything from auction too. So like half the stuff worked, half the stuff didn't. The mechanic was incredible. He could do anything. So they would drive this auction bought coach down to the border, pick all these people up who had been through the process with the embassy, gotten all the visas figured out, and then drive them all the way back up. And then they would provide housing. So each of the sites had different housing for different people. Luckily, I didn't have to deal with logistics around that. It was mostly, I was like operation based. So, but I mean, those hours were crazy too. Working in vegetables, I had no idea before getting into it, but you never stop. You work Sundays, you work Saturday, Sunday, any day. I would work regularly. I would work 80-hour weeks, but a lot of times in the summer, you'd be working hundreds, up in the hundreds. I remember one time and if it's going to rain, the next day and you're planting, you have to get stuff in, or else you're 2-3 days behind. So I remember we were out there in the dark on a tractor with, have you ever seen a transplanter before? It's an amazing machine. It's this huge red, it's on a pretty large tractor, but it's this thing where there's 4 seats in a row, and you have all these little starts that are like this big, this much, little bit of soil and then a little plant. So you toss these in these holes that spin around, and then it drops into another thing, and it goes into the ground like that. And it constantly moves as you're moving your tractor. But I was out there at 8 p.m. trying to get these starts in, and I remember these guys, I don't know what the deal was, but 2 of these guys I was working with had to FaceTime their significant others to show that they were working and not at the club or something, or like not out with their friends. I always thought that was funny. But it was stuff like that. I mean, they were crazy. Like the stories I heard about what Oregon was, like they were real cowboys. They were real, I don't know, in my mind it was just very gung-ho on getting things done. They bought, like I said, they bought everything from auction. They do things low cost. They try to do everything themselves. They don't hire out a lot. It was nuts. I think one of the craziest stories I ever heard was, I have another story about this too. They had a road grader. Have you ever seen one of those? It's like a really long machine. It's got a big blade on it that you use to grade. So they had one from the 60s. And that's how it was really cool. They used it to dig ditches in front of their bell pepper program, because their bell peppers you would put black plastic tarp down, and then put all the starts in the holes along there to keep weeds away during it, which is amazing to see, because then once you put bell peppers in, they grow the whole year. You harvest them, then they're done. And then the next winter, all that covered ground is drier than everything else. So I could get in and plant cilantro or parsley in mid-January, because it's dry enough and warm enough underneath that plastic tarp. Really cool. But they would use the grader to grade a ditch where those rows start, because we would use these like temporary irrigation hoses that always leaked. So that ditch would catch all that water and let it slow down. But that thing was rough, so I learned how to use it, and we would drive on the highway with it to get to and from different sites. And the first time I ever did it, they taught me how to move it and everything, and then I said, okay, go ahead. So I was driving on, what is that state park called? Shampooey. So I was driving away from Shampooey on that road toward McKay, the main highway, going to another site, and they didn't tell me there wasn't brakes. So I was going 15 miles an hour in this huge thing, and I couldn't stop. I was like, oh my God. So I dropped the blade, just shh, and then I turned off the ignition so the gears locked. And I called the owner, who was the guy who normally ran it, or the owner's dad who normally ran it. He's like, oh yeah, that's how I stopped too. What are you doing? So the other the crazier story I've ever heard from that is when they were in Clackamas, they had some property in the Dalles back in the day. This awesome owner, he drove this machine. They didn't have a permit to get it on a truck or something like that. So he drove this from Clackamas to the Dalles on these back roads, just like up the mountain. I don't know how long I guarantee it took him 14 hours to drive the thing. He was going 10 miles an hour the whole time. It was so crazy. So I'm working, I'm loving the job. I'm getting to a point where I'm learning an insane amount. I am very proud of the product that I'm producing too. I mean, these were affordable organic vegetables that our main buyers were Kroger, Albertson, Safeway, Trader Joe's, Chipotle bought our bell peppers. And I mean, it was so cool to see something that I grew in a mainstream place. Like, I know where that came from. I know exactly what went into that. I was very proud to see that. That was a big deal for me. It felt good to be proud of the product that I worked really hard to make. And my daughter was born, so we had a baby. Like, I found out that my wife was pregnant when my last day at Tabula Rasa. It's like, thank goodness I got that job at Syrian Sun, because that wouldn't have worked otherwise. But I worked so much. I didn't get to see my daughter for the first year and a half of her life, basically, because I worked so much. There were some times when I got to travel with her and do some things outside of work, but there was a lot of times where I left before they woke up, and I was back after they were asleep. So I was really missing out on that, and I was feeling like the amount of hours I was working just didn't really work for me. I wanted to find it was 2020, so everyone's talking about, oh, working from home and blah, 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 right? Okay, yeah, like all my friends who went to school for finance were like, oh yeah, I work from home, kind of 20 hours a week. And so like, how can I do that? How can I find a balance? Because I had this idea, why is farming always considered the hardest job? Why is it always you have to work so many hours to get this done? Why is that necessary? And I had that going around in my brain, and because I really wanted to find a balance for myself. Why can't I find a balance for people who work with me as well, right? People who are driving tractor, people who are harvesting whatever they're harvesting, crops. And so I just had that in my mind. I was doing some really cool research with OSU Extension, because we had so much land to work with. I met Nick Andrews, who's their cover crop specialist. I think he's higher up now, but I had applied for a job there working with the Extension office. Ended up not going through, unfortunately, but it would have been a really cool experience. I also love teaching. So kind of a work-life balance there, a little bit better. Continued working, and then I was on LinkedIn one day, and I saw a job posting for Lingua Franca for the associate vineyard manager position. And I knew Brandon, who was the vineyard manager. I knew him through Dallas Way. And I texted Dallas and said, hey, did Brandon leave? I don't understand. I thought he was really happy there, and just curious. I didn't want the job at all at that point. And Dallas texted back and said, no, he didn't leave and he wants to talk to you. I said, what? Why? It's like, oh, he wants to talk to you about the job. I was like, oh, shoot, okay. So he called me, or we scheduled a call, and I was on my way home from work. And he was kind of describing almost what I was thinking around work-life balance, because they were part of Constellation Brands. They do overtime after 40 hours for every employee, like in California. So it was kind of forcing him to have that in his head, right? He was managing a team of people that did that, and he was just interested in my background in operations to see how the fit would be. And I think that was I can't remember. It was May of 23. So I worked at Syrian Sun Farms for about 2 years. So in May of 2023, went over to Lingua Franca. I ended up accepting the job. I met with him and Thomas and did an interview, did a few site visits, and they offered me the job, which was amazing. So I started there, and I think it was cool to get back into wine. Mm-hmm. I had made the decision before to say to myself, I would only go back into wine if it's an estate job and if it's organic. And Lingua Franca checked both those boxes. So ended up going for it. I didn't really know what to expect, but I knew Brandon was amazing at what he did, and he was a great person. I'd only hung out with him a few times, but I've enjoyed my time with him and his wife. They're great people. So I started, and he basically said, as far as I can remember, he said, like, how can we adjust things, or if there's anything you want to change, just let's work together and do it. He was very open to change if it needed to happen, or if I saw we wanted to try something. He's always really open to that. And we had 2 tractor drivers at the time and 1 vineyard foreman who was great. Daniela was great. But so I started there in 2023 in May, got through that growing season, kind of getting to know the people. It's really hard. It was hard at Syrian Sun too, but to get into, to show up as someone's manager, like someone's superior, as someone who's younger than them and is a gringo. It's not the easiest thing, because the people who were there are still are there. The people who are there they've been working there for a certain amount of years. They know the site. So I tried really hard to show up and say, I want you guys to teach me what you do. I want to learn from you, and then we can work together to make changes. And it wasn't easy to start and to build that relationship. I mean, a new boss is never super easy for people. So I had to walk that line. But Lingua Franca was incredible. The sites are incredible. I think it was 67 acres at the home site, and then they had 17 out in Salem at the Bunker Hill. So got into that. I mean, it was pretty incredible to see what they've already done, what Brandon had done since he started from before. Because from what I heard before, it was a little less organized. And since Brandon had showed up, it really got whipped into shape, and they got their spray program dialed in and all their operations really dialed in. So what Brandon and I decided to do was, we are going to make sure that I came up with the idea because I wanted to do this for myself. I don't want to work weekends ever. So we decided, okay, everybody's going to work Monday through Friday. Nobody's going to work a Saturday. Nobody's going to work a Sunday outside of harvest. So we just did that. Everyone's like, oh, how can you work that many less hours and get all your work done? It's like, well, I think there's a lot of wasted time. If someone's working 12, 14 hours, 2 of those hours are not useful because they're tired, they're mentally exhausted. It could be unsafe. I would feel that way. I felt that way working that many hours, right? I felt unsafe driving a truck around at times. So I wanted to change that, and I wanted people to have lives outside of work. You know, they could be, I mean, from what I've heard and from what I experienced working so much, is you don't really have a life outside of work. You get home on Saturday at 5 p.m. or 4 p.m. and then you have one day off. So I was like, okay, I'm going to try to do this. I'm going to give these people just the freedom to do what they want to do on their weekends. If they want to keep working, go for it. Find work with your friends, find work at other places, but you have that time to do with what you want to do it. You can spend time with your family, whatever. So that was our goal, and we did it. We worked to make sure that everybody made the same amount of money, but worked less hours. So increase their hourly rates and decrease the amount of hours. And I think looking back at that year, those guys had worked 350 less hours. We got more work done than they did the previous year, and they got paid more. It was pretty incredible to see, just like this, these are the guidelines, let's get the work done. And so we just had to be more efficient. Like, in my mind, especially at the vegetable farm too, it's like efficiency is super important to me. Setting schedules beforehand is the only way I've found that works really well to get that done. So what I changed was, we have a weekly meeting on Friday. I think it was Fridays. We started it on Fridays, and we'd all get in a room. We'd say, this is what we're doing this week, or this is what we're going to start doing on Monday. So make sure at the end of Friday, everything's ready to go. So when you show up on Monday, you're just going, no thinking about it, just boom, go. And then we finish that job before we do anything else. If we need to change implements, we make sure that this is done. This is done. So it's just, it takes out all of the, like someone needs help mowing, I'm going to switch this out and come and then switch back out. It's like it's a bunch of waste of time. So just streamlining everything. And then I was getting feedback that our tractor drivers felt like they didn't have any say in what was going on. They kind of just felt like they had ideas. It's okay, I'm always trying to listen to that and trying to get better myself. I'm always trying to learn. So I changed the system a little bit where we have a big whiteboard every week. The whiteboard's always there, you can write on it whatever you want, but we have a list of jobs for the whole year written out. And then every week we say, this is what we're doing this week, what are we going to do next week? And then we talk about it. Why can't we do this, or why can we do this? what's priority, what's not, because of these factors. I think that changed a lot about the mentality around being told to do something and not having say, not having autonomy, to work together to do that. So, I mean, working at Lingua Franca, I got exposed to wine for the first time, too. I've tasted wine, sure, but I'd never really gotten to analyze wine like they did. I mean, I got to meet Dominique Lafon, and I was a part of their blending trials. Just being in the room with them it felt special. And we would extend those invitations to our tractor drivers as well, to expose them to the wine side. And Brandon was a really big proponent of that. He really wanted to expose everybody to everything, and kind of share that special part of working in wine, is like actually being able to taste it and experience that side of it. So we did that. It was great. I learned a lot about wine. I still don't know anything compared to a lot of people, but I'm slowly getting more and more familiar with it. Yeah. I mean, they had some big party here yesterday that I know very little about, but it was a big deal. I mean, all the Etzels were here, and Viticulture, I know, and Lingua Franca obviously was here. A few other producers that I don't know, but it seemed like a big deal. And I think the people that were here the people that showed up, they had very heavy French accents, and they were from France, and I know they're very well known in the industry. So it's just cool to be kind of around that. I've never really been exposed to that, because working in RP, you're just there, you show up, you leave. You kind of want to be in the background. You don't really want to be exposed, talking with many people. But that was part of Lingua Franca. That was really cool. And then having the corporate background of Constellation Brands, that was really focused on sustainable practices as well, and different projects that we're doing that are good for the environment, not just for the crop itself. It was really cool to have that financial backing to say, okay, I think this is going to be best for the soil, let's do this, or best for the surrounding property around our grapes, let's just go for it. So we were able to play with that a little bit and be involved in a lot of cool trials. And through working at Lingua Franca, Brandon pushed me and him both to be part of the Organic Wine Growers Network. So I got to go to those meetings and meet people. I knew Rob Schultz from working at RP. Him and I we've always hit it off, which was cool. I talked to them every once in a while. I worked in vegetables. He saw the produce. He's like, "This is yours, right?" He's like, "Yeah." This is what I grew. This is the kale that I grew. So, I mean, and then we got to be a part of that Organic Wine Growers Conference, which is cool. I actually got to present at that alongside Di Crisp and Peter Evers, who are both really well known in the industry, who are great people. And and Brandon introduced me to Di, because Di consulted with Lingua Franca. I believe he still does. He's an enormous wealth of knowledge. Him and I have been close, and now Lily Springs is across the street from Temperance Hill. So him and I interact just around that, talking about local issues, if there are any, or if like, oh, did you see frost? Did I see frost? Those kind of conversations can come up. And we have a few of the same types of tractors, same brands of tractors, and he really likes talking about tractors, and so do I. just little things, He was just telling me about his new fence tractor that he's gonna get. That sounds fascinating because it has this and all these cool tools that are safe and are effective. Really cool. Lingua Franca was an amazing experience, probably the best job I've ever had. And I told Brandon, we had our first review or something after a few months of me being there, and he said, what did he say? I forget what the question was phrased like, but basically he said, what would make you want to leave Lingua Franca? I was like, well, I don't want to be associate vineyard manager for very long. And he said, well, how long? I said, around 2 years probably is when I want to move up. So that 2-year mark came last year. And I said, I'm ready to move up. He said, well, we can't, because there's things moving on in the larger company. We can't move up. Brandon can't move up because of this and that. And then at that same time, Heath was leaving. Heath was leaving here, and I guess I was on I saw on LinkedIn the post for the job, and I was like, Alban said I was the first one to respond or like send my resume in, which was cool. So he saw me first, and apparently he had my name in his ear a few times from a few different people. So I interviewed here a few times with Heath and then with Alban, and made the decision to make the change. And it was cool. It was a cool experience to go through that interview process with them, to really get an idea of what the property was like and what Heath was doing. And I was ready to be a vineyard manager. I felt like when I was at Lingua Franca, I felt like I was doing my job well, and I wanted more. I felt like, and Brandon had so much he was dealing with a lot, and like outside of just being vineyard manager, he was doing a lot more. He was growing at the company, and so, but he also just had things he couldn't pass off to me because of logistics. So I'm happy to be here and have full say over what happens. It's very scary as well. Brandon and I worked extremely well together. I missed that most of all, probably, from working at Lingua Franca. Him and I worked really well, just deciding on when to spray, what to spray, where to disc, where not to disc, how to till, how not to till. Like when I showed up, we stopped using rototiller because it breaks down, pulverizes soil too much. So I only 3-in-1 now. He wanted to try it, so we tried it, worked out. I don't know, he's always willing to try something new, and I appreciate that. But now I don't have him to to talk with about decisions. So it was June of this year, June of last year, June 2025, when I made the switch over to Abbott Claim. And it was crazy. I mean, right in the middle of the season, you're probably the busiest time of season's May, June. So show up and had to meet. We have a team of 5 guys here who are fantastic. Had a chance to meet them and then go through the growing season. I was lucky that a lot of them are very experienced. I actually knew 2 of them from working at RP. I knew Ignacio and I knew Antonio just briefly from working at RP. And I actually met Ignacio here harvesting years and years ago, which was crazy. But yeah, we have a good team here. I'm still getting to know the sites. I mean, there's 18.5 acres of mature vines here. We've got another 12.5 of development baby vines, which is exciting. And then out at Lily Springs, we've got 34.5 acres of mature vines. Well, I mean, not super mature. They're 5 years old, but they're producing vines. And then we just planted another 15.2 up there of all Chardonnay. And I'm starting to learn what it means to have fully field blended clones, which is fascinating. Very difficult to estimate yield and work with sometimes, because so many different Chardonnay clones act so differently. So I mean, there's so much. But we got some really cool Marsal selections for the new planting that we did last year in 2025 of all Chardonnay, some from Christum, and then another few selections from another prominent winery vineyard in the region that we were able to get cuttings from. Really fascinating, completely field blended, like eight different selections. Completely field blended up to like 800 feet elevation, so it's pretty high up there. And now I'm, first time ever I'm selling fruit. I've never sold fruit before. So in this market, it's not easy to get in, not easy to do, but I'm starting to get into it. I mean, Alban has been a huge help. He's developed some amazing relationships over the years with some really special producers, local producers. So we sell fruit to a lot of really amazing people, including, I mean, Walter Scott, who else? I mean, we sold to Granville. We sold to Morgan Long, Seth. It's pretty, I mean, it's crazy to meet these people. I've only heard their names, right? So it's been special to be here. And then the owner here, Anthony Beck, I've gotten to meet him in person as well, which has been special. He's been a very warm, welcome person to be around. He's really excited about me, which is great. Feels good. And yeah, I've liked it. I've liked working here. I mean, just at the basic level, I mean, just hearing Alban and David, the assistant winemaker, hearing them work and conversate, you learn so much. I mean, these people are so good at what they do. I'm just excited to learn, and that's what I told Alban in the interview. He's like, "What do you want to get out of this?" Like, I just want to gain knowledge. Yeah, so I'm here and trying to make people's lives as good as possible, including my own. But I really care about our team, our tractor driving team here, and our hand team here, to make sure that we follow the same guidelines as I had at Lingua Franca. Really, you have weekends, do with it what you will. Nobody's going to work 12 hours outside of harvest, kind of thing. So that's where we're at.
I'm going to back up a little bit with a couple of things you talked about along the way that I'm interested in. Let's go back to UC Davis.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you did a lot of research and a lot of trials while you were there. Tell me a little bit about some of the work you did there. What are some of the things you were trialing, and what were some of the kind of the results or the memories you have from that?
So one of the biggest ones was, I'm blanking on the name, but basically we worked alongside Gallo out in Fresno, and we'd go out in the summer, and they would rent a satellite from NASA for 2 seconds, right, to take an image, and then we would be taking ground readings of photosynthesis levels, pressure. We would do pressure bombs, so water potentials, and the main goal was to find out, can we use satellite imaging to figure out how stressed out vines were so we can properly irrigate? And so the whole concept of evapotranspiration, I was working alongside them to basically just do the ground readings, but that was the idea, was can Gallo take satellite imaging and use it to see how much water they want to give their vines? That was insanely cool to say you got to work with NASA, which is awesome. And then there was a few just rootstock trials. What levels of drought did different rootstocks behave, how they behaved at different drought stages. But we were using mostly baby vines, young rootstock vines, to do these trials. So I think that's all I did. Yeah, 2 years. It was a lot of fun. But they were also, Andrew was also doing these he would go to Berkeley and rent this crazy X-ray machine for 12 hours. So he would go and do all these images of microscopic levels of xylem, and so he could see at different levels of, I believe he was doing different levels of stress, water potential stress, and seeing what the xylem looked like when it capsized, basically. So he'd take those images on X-ray, come back, and then I would like crop all those images out, and then he was able to 3D print the xylem and get a chance to see what it actually looked like. It was cool. That was probably, aside from working with NASA, that was also really, really cool.
And you also talked about, obviously, the tractor driving course. So tell me about I guess, what is a tractor driving course like? What were your memories from the course? And then as you're teaching it, what are you learning? What are you teaching? What is important to know for a student in a tractor driving course?
Yeah, so I would say the most important thing is safety, as we try to reiterate as teachers, safety around tractors. But basically they would bring you in, they would tell you what different tractors were, diesel versus gasoline. They would say what this does, how you turn soil over, different tools you'd use, plows versus discs versus harrows. And then you would actually get out once a week, you get out on a tractor, and then they would teach you how to use a clutch and put it into gear. Very minimum stuff, just go forward and go backwards. And then you go out and you turn, do all your turns, and then you're also checking oil, you're doing all the grease points, you're doing all the maintenance, very basic maintenance. But they had tractors from the 60s, like older tractors, older John Deeres that you could learn on, and then up to, they had a brand new, huge one that's bigger than this cave kind of thing, where you'd learn how to use GPS and learn how to use a larger tractor. But some of the people had never driven a car who had been there, because they're international students who, I think most of them were from China, who I remember, but they had never driven a car. So, do you know how to use a clutch? I was like, no. It's like, okay, so we gotta teach you how to do that. Luckily on a tractor, it's super easy. to get into gear. You don't have to give and go like on a car. You just kind of slowly let off the clutch, don't touch anything else, and it'll go into gear. And you teach how to change oil and change a flat, all the basic stuff. But then you actually get out with different implements in the field, and they teach you how to build rows. So you have a lister that shapes your beds, and you have a bed shaper after that. And you kind of at the end of the year, the final is you go out and you have a team of people that do each different job. And because they had a big field, they had like a couple acre field that you can go out and do test stuff in. So you'd hook up the implements, take them off, kind of basic stuff. But it was great. It was a great introduction to learning how to do tractors, learning how to operate and kind of manage, and also teach people how to do it. So now I spent those 2 years teaching people in English. Now I do it in Spanish. Most of the guys I work with, thankfully, are experienced in driving tractor, but sometimes they haven't used this implement or this kind of tractor, so I will teach them. But it's a huge help to have that teaching background and then a little bit of Spanish to help them get through it.
So you mentioned that after you graduated that California wasn't really of interest to you and you were looking at Oregon. What did you know about Oregon and or the Oregon wine industry at that point?
Absolutely nothing. All I knew was that Oregon was wet and it was green for a lot of the year, which I liked. It was more green than California. That's all I knew. I rarely drove to Napa. I rarely drove anywhere besides to skateboard out there. I didn't go wine tasting. I didn't have the money to do that, nor did I have the friends who also wanted to do that. We just kind of went skateboarding and rock climbing and stuff out in Tahoe.
So tell me about your impressions then when you got up here and started to see Oregon, started to see the industry. What were your initial impressions of the state and of the wine industry here?
So I love the environment. It's beautiful, especially spring, fall. I mean, you're just green and healthy. I love the rolling hills and some mountains in the background. You have access to the beach. You have access to Mount Hood if you want to go. Portland is a great city. I enjoy spending time in Portland. The industry itself seemed like it was my only industry I'd ever worked in. So my first impression was RP, and RP was go. It was go, go, go. And there were people at RP that are very intelligent. Their team is very good at what they do, the RP team. So just learning about efficiency, learning about managing people, and then learning what it's like to drive a tractor on a hill. When I was teaching tractor, it was on a flat little piece of land. It wasn't in between grapevines on a 20-degree slope, right? So learning how to do that is scary, right? If you're going downhill and you need to stop for something, you do not push the clutch, or else you're going to go, keep going, keep it in gear, don't touch the clutch. So yeah, that was a big part of my impressions, was different landscapes, different properties, different methods of managing. I loved it though. It was all, the people I met were great. A lot of them were transplants, not a lot of Oregonians, but I did meet a lot of really good people that have since become better and better friends.
So you mentioned that you talked about RP being kind of like a crash course masters. Tell me about, as you're seeing all these different vineyards, all these different farming styles, all these different kinds of practices, what were you learning was sort of what's the most important factor for growing grapes? What are the things that, no matter what kind of farming you're doing or what kind of site you're on, what is most important, and how do you sort of focus on that when you're going to different sites?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I would say every job you do is important. Nothing is secondhand. So nothing is in the back of your head. Everything is right there. So you show up. If you screw up pruning, you're screwed. If you screw up bud thinning, you're screwed. If you screw up spray season, you're screwed. So everything has to be really dialed in and really well done at the very start, right? You have to do that from job to job. And RP did that, and then they also worked with how to make that not affordable, but how to think about cost as well, right? How do you train a group of people? How do you train 10 people who had never pruned before to do it in a way where it's not going to kill the vine, and they're going to learn as they go, and you can't be there. the vineyard manager cannot be there because they have 10 other sites they also have to do this at. How can you trust people to be able to do that? So you're training, basically always growing your full-time staff to be better and smarter at what they're doing is the best way to be successful. I think, like with my internal team, we're always learning how to, I don't know how to analyze today. We're doing cordon pruning for my first time ever. We're converting some of our blocks to cordon, and they were teaching me because they'd done it with Sim18 and Cirque last year. And I worked with Sim18 and Cirque a little bit too, so I have an idea. But I mean, working together, asking questions. I'm asking them questions. They're asking me questions. They're asking each other questions. But giving them the autonomy to really know what they're doing and to be confident. Mm-hmm. And then spray program. Be on it. Don't be afraid to use sulfur. Use sulfur.
So now that you are, you've seen a lot of vineyards, you've examined a lot of sites. Tell me about how you evaluate a site and what it needs. What do you look for when you walk into a vineyard? It helps you determine sort of course of action.
So a big word that I always use is balance. I mean, everybody talks about it, but it really is. You show up, and if you see bull canes, if you see canes that are huge, super thick diameter, you know that they pruned too hard back the year prior, or they left too little buds. Or you show up in the summer and canopies aren't getting up to the top wire. They're weak. They're having short shoots. Something's wrong. They're pushing the vine too much. Mm-hmm. I show up and I see, are vines in balance? What does this look like? Mm-hmm. And I try to make a course of action, because I show up here in June, it's in bloom. So I get a really good idea of what everything looks like and how we can move on. What's the strength of these vines? What's the water availability for these vines? Because here we're on marine sediment and part of our property, so these vines have way less water available, way less clay content. So nutrients are less available, water is less available. It's just all that goes into how you properly manage. And then you are always spraying. 7-day intervals, organic spray. You can spread it out, just be really careful and open your fruit zone where you can. Avoid sunburn by don't pull on the west side, but pull leaves early, like during bloom, you can pull leaves. But I was gonna say, to add to that last question you had, most important part I would say as well, alongside what I already said, was community. That is the biggest thing I've learned, is that ask questions to everybody else who's doing the same thing you are. Everybody has different ways of doing things, be it good, be it bad, but you can always learn from it. And so that's why the Organic Growers Network is so important. We get together, and most of it's just talking about voles, but a lot of it is really seeing who's using this, who's doing this, has anybody trialed, this cover crop blend, has anybody done this, And so it's really cool to have those conversations, because everybody has experience in something different than you do. Mm-hmm. So I always try to do that. Mm-hmm.
So you talked about kind of your interest growing in sort of regenerative, holistic farming practices. Yeah. Tell me about growing interest in that, and about, I guess, gaining knowledge. You talk about the Organic Growers Group. Mm-hmm. How else do you sort of keep learning, keep up to date on best practices and on new technologies? Yeah, so
it's funny because I'm leaving tomorrow for a conference called Eco Farm. It's out in Monterey. It happens every year. I think it's the 56th year. I can't remember, but it's been going on for a long time. And these people are focused on agroecology, not just, that's like the new buzzword rather than just sustainable. It's agroecology. But it's basically everything you do is good for everybody. So including rights for workers, including, respect for your working team, respect for the property, respect for the vines. So I go and they have 3 days of workshops where everything from gopher control to to learning about policy is there. And these are farmers who have been working in the Salinas Valley or all over California, all over the world for their entire lives, and have a wealth of knowledge. And there's researchers from Berkeley that talk about soil. I got to go last year too, so there was a big focus on soil last year, how things interact underneath the ground, and I just constantly want to continue to do that. And I was going to apply for presenting at Eco Farm, mostly to get a free ticket, but I ended up not being able to because the job transition was at the same time as submitting something. But I would love to also be a part of that conference and talk about just operational efficiency within your farm. So many people know a ton about soil and a ton about cover crop and a ton about growing different crops, but a lot of people get lost in the day-to-day stuff. How do you really get into making schedules for a team of people and what that looks like in an efficient way? But yeah, I mean, I constantly want to go to Eco Farm every year. That'd be great. Learn more and more of the technical side and the vocational side. They have huge, amazing workshops there. And then mostly I want to learn more about proper land management. So we have a lot of open land on this property, and where part of it is going to oak restoration. So how can I in a healthy way plant more oaks? How can I keep them alive throughout the summer without water if I need to? Do I need to water them? How much do I need to water them? And then what can I plant around them to help them, right? Do we need blooming bodies? Do I need to put out pollinators? Do I need to put hedgerows in to stop water? You know, that kind of thing. So just constantly trying to learn about that. And then talking with everybody who I know who is knowledgeable about this stuff. I mean, there's an organization that Tabitha Rossi used and probably still use called Elemental Ecosystems, but they did all the earth moving. They built all their ponds. They built all of their water catching systems was developed by them. And so keeping in touch with them and just using what I've learned from them is super useful.
Tell me about the property here. You mentioned you have the site we're at now. You also have the site in near Temperance Hill and the Old Amity Hills. Tell me about getting to know the spot. You've had one kind of half season plus a harvest. How long do you feel like until you start to understand the kind of the special needs of certain parts of your vineyard and have an idea of sort of a bird's eye view of how to handle a normal year in your vineyard? Yeah,
it's going to take a long time, I think. It's going to take this year. It took 6 months, and I basically don't know anything. I feel like I don't really know anything about the property as much as I would like to know, right? And so this year, it's going to be way more. Spending a whole year. I mean, I prune alongside the guys normally, so walking every single row. I mean, at Lingua Franca, I sprayed a few times the entire vineyard. I drove a tractor. I've driven a tractor at every single row at all of Lingua Franca, which was a great way to learn about the site, what's safe, what's not safe, what pockets are weak. So here, I mean, I'm relying on my team to really help me get to know the property. Most of the people here have only been here for a year, but one guy has been here for 2. So I'm asking him, what do you see? What have you seen? And then out at Lily Springs, I mean, it's such a beautiful property, and we plan to expand eventually, hopefully not anytime soon. More grapevine. We just planted 15 acres. So it's just going to take so much time, but it's going to take a year of growing, right? A growing season, I think, is going to help me get a good idea. Yeah.
So with the focus on sort of organic and regenerative farming, what are the biggest challenges that presents for you and sort of the organic group that you work with? And how do you approach things like pest control, things like rodents, things like disease pressures? Yeah. What's different about it, and how do you sort of stay ahead?
In my mind, conventional agriculture is kind of like, what would you call it? Like, if you were only going to eat vitamins instead of eating food, that is kind of like conventional ag, where you have these things that are mostly synthetic that you can throw in your vineyard and never think about it again. And then there's a salad, a steak, all these amazing vegetables that are on the organic side that you can use to not interrupt what's naturally going on around your grapevines. So you have to stay ahead, because in a conventional farming, you can spray synthetics and you know that you're, for the most part, you don't have to scout, you don't have to do much. You can spray herbicide underneath your underneath your grapevines to make sure that you don't have weeds growing up. And the thing I like about organic farming is you have to be on it. You have to be really in tune with what's going on, or else you're going to be left behind. So you have to be in with your in-row cultivator early to get those cuts. I mean, undervine weed control is not easy to do, and there are amazing tools to help you do that. So we have an undervine cultivator that we use here that's rear mounted. We have one in the middle that's just a blade. You can keep your eye on the whole time. But all of that you have to do early and stay on it, or else you're going to be screwed later on. So, and then the same thing goes for spraying. You have to get your first sprays on really good. As soon as you're seeing green growth, you really count the days until you can safely put a good spray out. And then throughout your spray program, you're also managing your canopy in a way to keep canes or keep shoots from crossing, so less congestion. And you're also pulling leaves on your east side to open up that fruit zone so you can get your spray exactly on your fruit. And that's what I really care about too, because in organics you do a lot more passes. Your tractors are on your ground a lot more. And so what I want to do is every time you're driving your tractor in a row, you are using that to the full extent, right? You're not wasting any ground. You're not wasting any time on soil. You're really making it worth it. So opening up that canopy, getting your spray exactly on your fruit where you need it is extremely useful. It makes your spray just that much more able to do its job.
So one of the things that we've heard anecdotally, especially over the last maybe 4 or 5 years, has been rodent pressure in vineyards. Yeah. You mentioned obviously that's a big topic at the organic growers group. Yeah. How do you handle something like that?
Like, you have to be on top of it too. I mean, gophers are easier to see, right? Because they build little berms. And at RP, I learned a lot about trapping them, because I would just be sent out for 8 hours to trap. So you start to look for the fresh, wet piles, right? You knock all the piles down with a little hoe or something, and then you find your wet one, and then you knock it down, find the hole, and then you put a cinch trap in. It gets them almost every time. If you can find that fresh pile, I've had a lot of success doing it. So doing that and doing it really early, you do it in the spring before, like during mating, right? Because they're always active. So you try to get in there early, and then in the fall too, I try to get in before they go into hibernation because they're looking for food. So I go in really hard because there's also less to do around the vineyard. It's a little bit slower time for work. So I'm not afraid to use a whole day of work just to find and knock down piles and then go the next day, look for new ones. Yeah, but voles are a different story. I mean, there's like so many different workshops and books on how to catch voles, and everybody doesn't know what to do, or some people have had success, some people haven't. How do you track it? It's all new. At the last eco farm I went to last year, I learned about this thing called it's called sour clover, but it's supposed to be gopher killing, because it's just a clover you can put in your cover crop mix, but the roots have a compound in them, or are high in a compound that if a rodent were to eat them, it thins their blood. Oh boy. So it kills them that way. I haven't had a chance to use it yet because not a lot of people have it up here, but I'm definitely going to trial it, because if I can do that on voles, that's a huge deal. You can't really trap voles. I mean, you can trap voles, but it's very difficult. There's so many different holes to go through, and how do you properly manage that? It's really important to keep, one way to do that is to keep your undervine clean, because they will hide in little bunch grasses and stuff like that.
It's very glamorous work you're describing here.
Yeah, that's Oregon.
So you're obviously 6 months in here. Take me through the next couple of years. What are some of the things that you need to accomplish, want to change, want to grow here? What are kind of the initial projects on your horizon here?
Yeah, so we planted 15 a little bit over 15 acres. So I want to establish those vines and get them as healthy as possible. We have zero irrigation, and it's on a hillside. It's pretty exposed, so could see some not dieback, but failed plants. So replanting is really important. Watering when we can is super important out there. And then here we have 8 acres of Pinot that we just planted this year or last year too. So getting those established in the best way we can, and alongside that working to build the property as well. Can we continue to do our oak restoration project, and how do we expand that? How do we trap water? I just went to Lingua Franca for a field day talking about water, and with the county. The county came out and did a presentation with Mimi Castile, and they were talking about building beaver dams, where to look, how to do it. If we can stop water up in our field and kind of replenish our own wells, and then potentially the wells and the neighboring community of water, that'd be amazing. So trying to use off time in the season to build that and to clean all the invasives out of our forests as well. We have some pockets of forest that are just full of blackberries and poison oak, so it'd be nice to use some time to clean that up, get airflow through there, and get some more natives planted within there.
Anything else on your horizon, either at work or beyond, that you're excited about? Do you have travel coming up? Do you have anything else that's exciting in your future for you?
Not just working here. I mean, my daughter is turning 4 next month, so I have a 4-year-old, and watching her grow, it's been amazing. And now I have jobs that allow me to do that. I mean, at Lingua Franca I was able to, and here I have some flexibility as well to be able to spend time with her and my wife. I mean, just being time with the family has been really important to me, and I want to just continue to build friendships. I have a golf league now. Are you familiar?
Are you in Travis's golf league?
You know about Travis?
Yeah. I do know about Travis's golf league.
Yeah, so Travis and I started this together, and so I'll be continuing to do that, and it's fun. You only play at the Bayou. You can't play anywhere else. And it's pretty fun. And then skateboarding. I want to continue to skateboard. I want to keep making music if I can, do some art if I can.
Making music, art?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
So when I was in high school, I was in a band, an awful, very terrible band. But I learned how to play guitar and a little bit of bass and drums. So I have a drum kit at my house now, play a little bit. Travis is a very good guitar player, so him and I have played together. I think only once, but I want to get together with him more. Play music just for fun, don't play shows or anything, but just continuing to create and have fun. And then art, I like to draw, and I'm really into American traditional tattoo, kind of pop art style. So I've done 2 harvest shirts for different companies. I did one 2022, I did Ponzi's, and then 2024 I did Lingua Franca's. So it'd be cool to do one here. I'd be excited about that.
So you talked earlier about kind of your initial impressions of Oregon. Tell me about if and how things have changed in the industry in the state. What have you seen over the last few years? What does the industry look like now? And what are the biggest sort of challenges, opportunities that you see on the horizon for the industry?
Yeah, so when I first started, I was completely oblivious to what was going on. I was just kind of trying to survive and learn from RP, right? I knew that Domaine Serene was well known, or whoever big. I still don't know much about big names or whoever. It's been interesting. You see more corporate than I think I remember, and some smaller brands are coming up too, which is really cool. Some friends started a few small labels, like Travis at De La Boo, and then Chris and Draga at Liska. They're doing some really cool work, and then Vince, who works in this tasting room now, him and what's it called, Mate Pop? I think him and Shay are doing. So it's cool to see the smaller brands that are also being successful. I think that's new, as far as I can tell. They are able to get more exposure than before, and it seems like somebody's really pushing marketing for them, getting the indie wine mixer going. All that's really cool, fun to see. And yeah, I don't know too much about the industry. I'm going to learn a lot from Alban. Alban is a wealth of knowledge around what's going on. So continuing to learn from him and figuring out who is who. Like I've definitely been in situations where I didn't know that person was who they were, and I was a little bit more candid than I should have been. So it's definitely happened before. I have to figure out who people are.
Sometimes it's blissful not to know, but sometimes it's important to know. I like that. Last question for you. Tell me about your proudest accomplishment, biggest achievement so far, personally, professionally, whatever. What are you proudest of at this point in your life?
I mean, I'm very proud to be where I am. I think a lot of, I would say that I have the best job in the Willamette Valley, in my own opinion. I think a lot of people would agree with me that this job is very sought after, and I feel honored that I was recommended to Alban the way I was. And I think that's one of the biggest accomplishments of my life, is to know that what I'm doing is recognized. And I want to continue to work with the Organic Growers Network, with Rob, and to get organic more marketable, or get more and more people knowledgeable about it. It's important to me because, I mean, organic, has been washed out by a lot of larger companies who just kind of use the word, but to really engage people and to teach people what it means and what the difference is, right?
All right, all the questions I have for you. Anything I didn't ask that I should have, anything we didn't cover today that you're hoping to cover?
I don't think so.
Excellent.
I felt like I talked for a long time.
You told a great story. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for taking the time to share with us. Thanks for sharing this amazing space. It's always a pleasure to be in the caves here at Abbott Claim. We'll go ahead and let you off the hook. Thank you.